Not like this. Not with his hands on his knees, staring at a patch of grass in New Jersey, while a stadium of 80,000 people screamed in a language that wasn't his own. For 20 years, we watched him rewrite what was possible with a football at his feet. We watched him drag a broken Argentina team to a final in 2014 and lose. We watched him finally lift the trophy in Qatar, tears streaming down his face, the weight of a nation lifted off his shoulders in one single, perfect night. We thought that was the ending, the fairy tale, the redemption arc complete. But Lionel Messi came back, one more time. Older, slower, surrounded by a new generation of teammates who grew up idolizing him instead of playing beside him as equals. And for 6 weeks this summer, across stadiums in the United States, Mexico, and Canada, he tried to do it again. This is the story of how it ended instead, because on Sunday night at MetLife Stadium, Spain beat Argentina 1-0. And the final whistle didn't just end a football match, it ended an era. And what happened in the minutes after that whistle became almost as big a story as the game itself. Let's start from the beginning of this run, because to understand how brutal this ending was, you need to understand how close he came to writing one more miracle. Messi walked into this tournament as the oldest superstar on the biggest stage football has ever built. 48 nations, 104 matches, 3 host countries, the largest World Cup in history, and at the center of the conversation, still, somehow, was a man in his late 30s who was supposed to have been finished years ago. Critics said his legs were gone. They said Argentina were too dependent on moments of individual brilliance and not enough of a team anymore. They said this would be the tournament where Father Time finally caught up. And for the first few games, it looked like they might be right. Argentina scraped through the group stage, not with the swagger of 2022, but with grinding, nervous, low-scoring wins that had fans back home biting their nails through every match. Messi wasn't the same explosive force. He was quieter, more of a conductor than a soloist, picking his moments, saving his legs, trusting the players around him to do the running he no longer could. But then the knockout rounds began, and something shifted. There's a version of Messi that only shows up when everything is on the line. We saw it against the Netherlands in 2022. We saw it in the final against France. And somehow, impossibly, at an age when his body should have betrayed him completely, we saw it again this summer. A quarterfinal masterclass where he pulled the strings from deep, spraying passes that split defenses apart like they weren't even there. A semifinal against England where Argentina found themselves down late, and Messi, on legs that had played more World Cup minutes than anyone in the history of the tournament, produced one more moment of magic to drag his team level, and then watched his teammates finish the job in extra time. Argentina were back in a World Cup final, and the entire football world turned its attention to one single question. Spain arrived at this final a different animal than the Argentina side they were facing. Younger, faster, deeper. A midfield full of players who had grown up inside academy systems built specifically to produce exactly this kind of football. Quick, intricate, suffocating possession that starves opponents of the ball before they even realize the game has slipped away from them. And from the opening whistle, you could feel it. Argentina were chasing shadows. Messi tried everything. He dropped deeper to get on the ball more often. He drifted wide to find space away from Spain's pressing triggers. He even pushed forward late in the first half in a desperate attempt to find one moment, just one, that could change the entire complexion of the match. But Spain's backline had done their homework. Every time Messi received the ball in a dangerous position, there were 2, sometimes 3 defenders collapsing around him instantly. They weren't going to let him have the one thing he needed most: space and time. The goal, when it came, felt almost inevitable in hindsight. A patient build-up, dozens of passes strung together with a precision that made the Argentine midfield look like they were standing still, before a low, driven finish found the corner of the net just before the hour mark. 1-0, Spain. And then Argentina had to chase the game, which meant leaving gaps at the back, which meant Spain's pace on the counter became even more dangerous, which meant every attacking substitution Argentina's manager made only opened them up further. Messi kept fighting. There's a moment late in the second half that's already being replayed everywhere, where he received the ball just outside the box, surrounded by 3 defenders. Messi kept fighting. There's a moment late in the second half that's already being replayed everywhere, where he received the ball just outside the box, surrounded by 3 defenders, and somehow spun away from all 3 before his shot was blocked at the last second. The crowd rose to its feet. For one heartbeat, it felt like the miracle was coming. It didn't come. The final whistle blew. Spain, world champions, Argentina and Messi, left with nothing but the walk back to the center circle for a handshake that felt heavier than any handshake in the history of the sport. And that's when things got messy, because in the chaos immediately after the final whistle, tempers boiled over. A confrontation broke out on the touchline involving Argentine midfielder Leandro Paredes and several Spanish players, footage of which spread across the internet within minutes and became one of the most viewed clips of the entire tournament. Frustration, exhaustion, and heartbreak spilling out in real time in front of a global audience of hundreds of millions. It wasn't the ending anyone wanted. Not the players, not the fans, not the neutrals who had tuned in hoping for one final piece of Messi magic. But football doesn't care what story we want. It only cares what happens on the pitch. And on that pitch, on that night, Spain were simply the better team. So where does that leave the legacy? Some will say this proves Qatar was the exception, not the rule. That Messi got his fairy tale ending once, and trying to chase it a second time was always going to end in disappointment, because lightning doesn't strike twice, especially not for a 39-year-old body running on fumes and memories. Others will say the opposite, that dragging an aging, transitional Argentina squad to a World Cup final at this stage of his career, against a Spain side loaded with the best young talent in the world, is itself one of the greatest achievements of his career. That losing this final doesn't erase what he built. It adds another layer to it. Because greatness was never really about trophies alone. It was about showing up, again and again, even when your body says no, even when the world says you're finished, even when everyone around you is younger, faster, hungrier. Messi showed up one more time. He gave everything he had left, and this time, it simply wasn't enough. Maybe that's a more honest ending than the fairy tale anyway. Football isn't a fairy tale. It's a sport built on heartbreak as much as glory. And for every Qatar, there's a night like this one. A final whistle, a walk back to the locker room, a career that doesn't end with a trophy raised overhead, but with a man on his knees, staring at the grass, knowing that was the last chance he'll ever get. 20 years from now, when people talk about Lionel Messi, they won't just talk about the goals, or the trophies, or the records. They'll talk about nights like this one too. The nights where he lost. Because those nights are what make the nights where he won mean something. He gave us 2 decades of impossible moments. He gave us a World Cup in Qatar that will be remembered forever. And he gave us one final chapter in New Jersey that reminded us he was human after all. Maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not a man who won everything. A man who tried everything. Right up until the very last whistle of his very last World Cup. And isn't that, in the end, exactly what made him great in the first place?